Thank you everybody for joining us today for our Grants for Artists info webinar. I'm going to go ahead and get started, and if people join us along the way, we'll just let some more people into the meeting. But yeah, thanks again for coming. I just wanted to say really quickly a little bit about OVAC and who we are, and introduce myself and kind of what we're going to be talking about today. But the Oklahoma Visual Arts Coalition was founded in 1988, and our mission is to grow and develop Oklahoma's visual arts community through education, promotion, connection, and funding. So Grants for Artists is only one of the programs that we offer throughout the year. We also offer exhibitions and professional development opportunities like workshops and panels and different things where you can learn about different subjects. So that's a little bit about our organization, and I'm going to talk more about what Grants for Artists are. And then a little bit about me. My name is Ariana. I'm from Oklahoma City and I've lived here my whole life. And I'm also a visual artist. So I'm really lucky that I get to work with so many visual artists and also help them apply to the programs that we offer here. And I went to OU and studied printmaking, so that's kind of my thing. And then I started working here at OVAC in 2021 and started managing our grant programs here in 2022. So I've really gone through like two of their like yearly cycles, and I'm glad that I can share some more information about the process with you guys. And yeah, my email is on the screen, as well as our website where you can learn more about our Grants for Artists program, or contact me if you have any questions. But we can go ahead and, well, I guess I'll talk about kind of like our agenda. I'm going to talk about what this program is, what kind of grants we offer through this program, who's eligible to apply, what you need to apply, examples of projects that we funded in the past, and also a timeline of what to expect if you are awarded a grant. So if you want to keep your camera on or off, that's totally fine. If you need to take a break, that's totally fine as well. I'm going to be recording the meeting and we're going to post it on our YouTube and our website after this is over, so you can come back and use it as a resource in the future. I'll just ask that all of you guys keep your microphones muted while I'm going through the presentation, and then at the end we'll have time for questions. And you can also put them in the chat if you want to, and I can answer them at the end, or just write them down and we can talk about it at the end. So yes, those are some of the little housekeeping things, and then I'll get started right into the presentation. But yeah, first of all, what are Grants for Artists? So this is a program that we've been doing at OVAC for many, many years. Usually we have about $16,000 to offer in grants every year. And we fund grants in 4 different categories. So we have professional basics, education assistance, creative projects, and community artist partnership projects. And then I'm going to go through each of these and talk more about what each of these specifically fund and the kinds of projects that people apply with. But yeah, these are a great resource. They're one of the only grants, like this is one of the only grant programs in the state that gives money directly to individual artists. It's free to apply to the grants. And at the Oklahoma Visual Arts Coalition, we do have a membership program, but you don't even have to be a member to apply. And we just want to kind of like remove as many barriers as possible for people applying, which is also why I wanted to do this webinar, so that I could share information with you guys and kind of like walk everybody through the process. Sorry, again, my slides all messed up, but I also really like looking at numbers. So this is also a little bit of context of how many applications we usually receive in a year, and then how many grantees we have. So like how many projects we actually fund. Our fiscal year is a little bit weird. It starts in June and ends in July. So it's kind of different from the calendar year, but so our fiscal year 24 is already done. We received 75 applications and funded 26 of those projects. And you can see how that has kind of panned out over the last 3 years. So it usually breaks down to about 25 to 35% of the applications we receive, we're actually funding their project. Just because, like I said, we have that like $16,000 budget range every year. So unfortunately, we can't fund every single application that we receive. But hopefully that provides a little bit of information and context about how many applications we're receiving and how many we're funding. And now we can just get started into talking more about those 4 grant categories that we have and what kind of like more information about each of those. So the first one is professional basics. This is up to $500 for the essentials of an art practice. And out of the 4 categories, this is one of the more competitive ones. I think because it's very broad and is something that any artist can really need at any point, which what we're giving these grants for is for artists usually buying kind of like physical or tangible items. So sometimes people want to buy a camera so they can document their artwork, or buy supplies so they can, make work for a show, or pay for framing if they're having pieces in an exhibition. And all of these are just kind of examples of different things that we've funded and are kind of ideal things that we would fund in this category. And so, yeah, there's also like website development. A lot of artists, that's a really great tool for their practice, is having a website of like their portfolio, information about them, and all kinds of things like that. So we've also helped pay people to, pay to build a website or hire someone to help them with that. Or paying somebody to take really high quality photographs of your artwork, or documenting that in some kind of way. Shipping your artwork. If you have like an exhibition that's going on out of state and you need money because the shipping is going to be a lot. Yeah, all kinds of different things. Or travel to professional events. Again, like if you're having an exhibition out of state and it's going to cost a lot of money, that's one of the things that this could fund. So really for kind of like tangible things and just things that are really necessary for your artistic practice is what this category is really for, and you can get up to $500 for those kinds of things. One tip that I will say about this one, and another category that I'll talk about as well, is just that if you have a confirmed or like guaranteed opportunity, that will help strengthen your application. So for example, if you're like applying to get $500 for materials or framing for a show that's coming up, if you already know the show is coming up, it's confirmed and like guaranteed, and you can put that in your application, it'll help strengthen the application, just because it'll really make sense to the people reviewing this application. They applied for this, they're going to make this work, they need the money to make the work, and then it has a place to go once the artwork is created. And all of that is kind of like lined up. Whereas if you are just requesting money for supplies, but there's not really like a specific end goal, if people are choosing between 2 applications like that, the one with like a confirmed, exhibition or show or opportunity of some kind will usually be the stronger one. And for some things, like if you're buying a camera to document your artwork, that's kind of not specifically relevant, but just a tip to keep in mind when you're looking through these things and thinking of applying. The next category is education assistance. So this is up to $500 for educational opportunities. And again, there's different examples like conferences, seminars, artist residencies, workshops, study trips. And these things can be local, regional, or international. So if you're going to an artist residency in a different country, you can apply for $500, and that can help cover, maybe the cost of the residency or the cost of the travel that it will take you to get there. But again, it could also be like a local opportunity if there's a really good workshop that you want to take to help strengthen your practice and help you learn more. Yeah, this is really like open to all different kinds of educational opportunities in all the different places that they happen. The next category is creative projects. So the first two are up to $500. This one and the next category are up to $1,500. And it's for creating new work that culminates in a public event focused on the artist's own work. So this is really where you think more about like the exhibitions, public artworks, installations. And there is a little bit of overlap between maybe like the creative projects and professional basics. But this one is like, instead of maybe applying for $500, that's only going to go towards supplies or framing. Maybe you're having like a solo exhibition and you need that whole $1,500, and it's going to go to supplies and framing and printing posters so you can market the exhibition that's happening, and like maybe a little bit of travel if you have to go to a different city or something like that. So those are the kinds of things that this category would fund. And this is also the two really popular ones that people like to apply for. Definitely the creative projects and professional basics. Because, buying supplies and having shows are kind of the things that artists always have going on. And then the final category is community artist partnership. So this is up to $1,500 for initiating community-based projects leading to artwork creation. So this is a little bit different than the last category, because whereas the last category, it could just be you creating artwork for like a solo show or something like that. This one is going to be initiating community-based projects. So it's going to at least be involving, more than just yourself, more than one person. It'll be engaging the community in some way. So examples of projects that we funded in the past. We funded a lot of community mural projects. We've received a lot of applications of this type over the last several cycles of grants, which makes sense, especially in Oklahoma City. Murals are a very big thing right now. If you're doing some kind of educational program, maybe where you're teaching art to a group of people, community of people, and they will be creating artwork. And another part of this is if you're applying for this category, you have to have a partnership with some kind of organization that serves the public in some way. So this could be a nonprofit, a school, a library, all kinds of different things. And I can talk a little bit more about examples of these kinds of projects. When we get to the end, I have some examples of ones we've funded in the past. So, this is just saying like, if you're gonna have a community mural project, maybe you're partnering with, a library, and the people that go to this library and that live near there are going to be the people that are going to help create the mural and like help paint it or something like that. So that's just kind of like an imaginary example that I just made up. But so those are our 4 categories. And then moving on, we can talk a little bit about the eligibility of who's eligible to apply for these grants. Again, our organization is the Oklahoma Visual Arts Coalition. So we're really looking for visual arts projects and to support artists that live in Oklahoma. Those are like the 2 main things, because we have a limited budget. We can't fund every single project. And if we get outside of these baseline criteria, you know, we're going to be getting hundreds and hundreds of applications and we're not going to be able to fund anywhere near any of them. So if it's a project that is like really, the focus is in like dance, theater, music, it's not going to be best suited to these grants that we offer. We really want to focus on visual arts. And again, if you have like a big project that is maybe like an installation where you're having like sculpture and painting and it has like a music component, that's fine. But if it's really the focus is something other than visual arts, again, probably not best suited for this grant. But I'm always a resource if anybody has questions about any of these little fine details, just feel free to let me know and I can help talk through that. And then criteria that we're really not looking for or like not able to fund these projects are if you are like younger than 21, if you're pursuing a degree for art, like an MFA or a BFA. We also don't fund 501c3s or nonprofits. We don't fund artists that live outside of Oklahoma with these grants. And then these three, Grants for Artists, Thrive Grants, and Momentum Spotlight Artists are three of the really substantial ways that we give funding to artists. So if you've received one of these in the past year, then we just ask that people wait a year before they reapply so we can kind of get some diversity of applications and try to fund some different people instead of funding similar projects or the same artists over and over again. Because yeah, our mission is really to serve independent adult artists. We don't do a lot of things with like young children. And we're also not really trying to fund like school projects, which is why we have this MFA and like BFA stipulation. And yeah, just because like if you're in school or seeking a degree for art, you'll probably have resources through your university that people not in the university won't have. And once you finish your degree, this resource will still be here for you. So yeah, again, and with the nonprofit, we're funding individuals. We're not funding like other organizations or things like that. And so, yeah, that's great because we get to give money directly to artists and we love that. Next up, we have application materials. So this isn't a full exhaustive list, but these are things that are going to be asked in basically every application of those 4 grant categories. So we have a project summary where you'll describe what you're going to use the money for, what is your project, what you're going to do, an artist statement, artwork samples, a resume, and I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about those, and then a timeline of how you're going to complete this project that you're proposing and how long it will take you. So if you're doing an exhibition, again, I'm going to reach out to galleries during this month. Then this month, I need to have a confirmed exhibition space. Then over the next 6 months, I'm going to create this many artworks. Then the next month, I'm going to frame them and install them in the space. And then the exhibition will take place for 3 months or something like that. That's just an example, and you might want to be a little bit more detailed. But that will just be a roadmap of how your project will reach completion and showing the people reading the application, you know what you're doing and you know how long it's going to take you to finish this project. And then also a budget. So again, like for the exhibition example, if you're going to buy supplies, framing, all different kinds of things, you'll say what you're going to buy, how many you're going to buy, how much it costs. And then at the bottom, usually there will be a total. So if you are applying for $1,500, then that total would probably add up to $1,500. Or if it's over that amount, say it's $3,000, where are you going to get the other $1,500? Are you going to pay for it yourself, or are you going to apply for another grant? And in which case you could put that in your budget too. Where is the income coming from? you would definitely list whatever grant you're applying for and then add in if you're receiving any other income. And then also there will be 1 to 2 specific questions depending on what category you're applying for. Like for the education one, it'll ask, what is the educational opportunity? And like, how is this going to help your artistic practice? Or if you're applying for creative projects, it'll ask you, what is the project? And what is like the concept and the purpose of the project? So at OVAC, we collect basically all of our applications for any of our programs, grants, exhibitions, anything through Submittable, which is a really great website. You can go on there, create a login, and then when you're looking at these specific applications, you can look through all the questions, kind of answer them as you have the materials ready, and then you can save it. And that's really helpful because then you can come back and like work on it multiple times before you submit it, and it'll save everything there. So I'd really recommend, if you're interested in applying, just go on there as soon as you can, look at the physical applications. And some of the questions have like word limits. Like I think the project summary is usually like 250 words or something. And you can see all the specific details about that. And then some more details about the specific application materials. When we ask for artwork samples, you'll show examples of work that you've done in the past, or sometimes if you're like proposing an exhibition, you could submit like sketches or samples of the kinds of work you're going to submit or planning to make for that exhibition. But these are examples of my work that are images that I've submitted for shows before. So you want to have good lighting and have the images be cropped, so that it really just focuses on the artwork and doesn't have a lot of stuff in the background. And these pointers that I'm going to be giving are kind of applicable not just to this, but to probably any application that you are going to apply for, if it's shows or grants or anything. And if you have like 3-dimensional artworks, then I would recommend having an empty background if you can, like maybe just like an empty table and like a blank wall or something like that. So the focus is really just on whatever artwork you're trying to photograph. And if you don't have the resources to have like a nice camera, these images I just took with my iPhone. So I feel like good lighting can go a long way. And yeah, I just took these with my iPhone. And then I think like another point I wanted to make is if you can organize these in some way, like create an album in your phone where you have all of these photos of your artwork, like nice photos, or store them on your computer or something. Then every time you apply for a grant or an exhibition, you already have them and you don't have to like re-photograph every piece for every opportunity that you're applying for. So just having nice artwork samples goes a long way, and if you can take one nice photo, you don't have to redo it again. You can just keep it and use it in the future. Because, you know, the people looking at your application, they really want to see what kind of artwork you do, and if the photograph isn't the best quality or doesn't have good lighting, then it's just going to be hard for people to tell what your artwork is. And then another application material is an artist statement, which a lot of people ask questions about. You know, maybe they've never written one before, or they're not sure where to start or what to include in their artist statement. And these are things that a lot of people include in their artist statement. So you'll talk about the media or materials that you use to create your artwork. So if you're a painter, sculptor, ceramicist, printmaker, photographer, talk about what it is that you do. And then you can also talk about your process. Like if you're a painter, but all of your paintings you do plein air, like outside, you can talk about that. And also themes. And I feel like that kind of ties in a little bit sometimes to the process. why do you do these things? What are the things that you're depicting in your artwork? Things like that, as well as influences. If you're really influenced or inspired by certain artists and they have an impact on your work, you can talk about that. But the big thing is that this will change over time and also will kind of vary based on what you're applying for. So I've applied to shows where I'm just submitting 3 of my artworks for a show. I will kind of tailor my artist statement to talk about, generally I depict these themes and I do printmaking, but maybe I'll talk specifically about what's going on in these 3 pieces. And yeah, like if you're submitting a grant proposal for an exhibition that you're planning, then again, you'd want to talk about the themes and processes and materials that you're going to use in this project. So again, this is something that, just start working on it, save a draft of it. It will change over time, but again, if you can store it on your computer, on your phone, or somewhere and go back to it, it's helpful to have a draft of it or something that you've worked on already and that you can kind of tweak depending on what you're applying for, and the pieces that you're kind of talking about. And then another thing that we always ask for in our applications is a resume or a CV. And this is, again, another thing that a lot of different opportunities will ask for when you apply, and something that you can just save a draft of it and it will kind of change over time. This is another thing, like while I've been at this job, when people are asking me questions about like artist statements, resumes, sometimes people have never made a resume for like their art practice. And it's very similar to making a resume for like a normal job that you're applying for, where it's kind of broken down in sections, where there's maybe like an education section, an exhibition section, publications. These are just like examples of different sections that you might put on your resume. And then under the education one, like I went to a university to study art, so I would put that under that. But you could also put maybe like workshops or things that you've taken or classes, but you also don't have to put it if you don't want to. I feel like the big one is exhibitions, which will be a section, and then under that you can put examples of shows and exhibitions that you've been in. So usually you can list like the name of the exhibition, where it took place, and the year or time period that it took place in. Also publications, like if you've been featured in a publication for your artwork or written articles that have been published, you can put that under there. If you've won awards, like at exhibitions, like you got awarded the best in show or something like that. Or public artworks. Because I feel like sometimes murals are one that's kind of hard to document on your resume, but I think under like a public art category, that might work well. But yeah, and I would also recommend for the artist statements and the resume, if there's an artist that you really like and admire their work, and maybe, they're like a little bit higher up in their career than you are, you can like go on their website, and a lot of the times people will have their artist statements and resumes on their website. And that's a really good way to just see examples of people that you admire and get inspiration for how to formulate your own. And obviously the internet is a really great resource, but you can look up examples of artist resumes and artist statements and stuff like that. And one thing that I do is I just have a spreadsheet that has like a running list of all of the different shows and like opportunities that I've taken place in. And so then whenever I need to like update my resume, I just have a list of all these things that I've done, and I can just kind of plug them into my resume in whatever place makes sense. So those are some tips for all the application materials that you need to apply. some writing tips. These are just kind of like general, but answer every question thoroughly. I wrote down an example, which is one of the specific application questions that we ask for the Creative Projects Grant. I think I said it earlier, is describe the project, concept, and purpose. So it's a pretty short question, but there's like 3 parts to it. There's the project itself, the concept, and the purpose. So in the project, you would probably say generally what it will be. It will be an exhibition, and I will be making this many artworks. This is what the kind of artwork I'm making. And then the concept, would be maybe more like the themes or how I came up with the idea for this show. And then the purpose would be, I want to create this show for a reason, maybe like to reach out to a specific community or tell a specific story. So in that one short question, there's like 3 different parts that you need to answer. So that just really ties into that first question, which is just making sure that you're answering every question thoroughly, even though it might seem like a short question. Maybe there's multiple parts to it that you need to answer. So just be conscious of that and make sure you're answering everything very thoroughly. And then the next piece of advice is assume the people reading your application don't know who you are or what your project is, which I think is kind of a good exercise to put yourself through, because it helps you think about, if you were telling this idea you have for this project or exhibition or something for the first time, what would they need to know? And, people can't just like read your mind and know what your ideas are. It takes a lot of practice to get used to conveying your ideas through writing. And so I think this tip kind of helps you get into that brain space of like thinking about what are all the little details that I need to communicate to someone who doesn't know me at all and doesn't know what this project is at all. Why is the project important to your artistic practice? This is another one that it just really helps the people reading the applications understand, why this needs to be funded, why this is like a good fit. And the more that it seems like whatever your project is like really necessary, just makes sense for you as an artist. I don't know, it helps strengthen your application a lot. And then of course the last one, read all the guidelines thoroughly and ahead of time. Because the last thing you want is you're about to submit your application in 10 minutes because the deadline is almost here, and then you didn't realize that you needed to submit a resume. And now you have to go through and like create a resume from scratch, and it takes all this time, and you have to export it and upload it and all of this. So just read everything ahead of time, read all the guidelines thoroughly. And again, if you have questions, if you're reading through things and they don't make sense, feel free to send me an email or reach out, and I'm happy to answer questions. Because yeah, it just makes sense. Ask the questions, try to submit the best application you can ahead of time. And yeah, I think those are some of the tips. And then we can move on to our next section, which is how we evaluate the applications. So I've talked a little bit about like, keep this in mind for the people that are reading your application. The people reading your application are a committee of people. That's what we do at OVAC. And I feel like a lot of organizations do this, where I will, of course, read your application, but I'm not the one deciding if you get the grant or not. We have a group of people that read through the applications and evaluate them and ultimately decide which artists are getting the grants and which ones aren't. So they're usually made up of artists, art professors, arts administrators that work at different organizations and things like that. And they're all people from Oklahoma. We serve artists all across Oklahoma, so sometimes there are people from Oklahoma City, from Tulsa, all kinds of different places. And that's what also goes back to the tip of assume that these people don't know you, because they might be someone reading your application from an entirely different city than you live in. But our selection committee uses these scoring matrices to evaluate all of the applications. And every category, the 4 different categories, has a different matrix. And they're all viewable on our website. They're just PDFs, so you can save them or look at them on our website whenever you're writing your applications. And these are just really good things to take into consideration. And usually the questions in the application, you'll be like answering this stuff anyway. But it's just good things to keep in mind. So for like the education assistance grant, the different categories they're evaluating the application on are the quality of the educational opportunity, the impact on your artistic practice, your ability to complete the project, and the relevance based on your portfolio. So like for the portfolio one, if you're like a ceramicist, but you're applying for a grant to take an embroidery class, the committee might be like, this is kind of strange and I don't really understand what the association is. And that's why it's like important to, like if there is some kind of connection, maybe like in your artwork samples, you can say, I'm a ceramicist, but I also incorporate like thread and embroidery and sewing into my projects in this way. And then you can show examples of that in the artwork that you do. Or like quality of the opportunity. It'll ask like, what is this educational opportunity and like who's organizing it? And then we can like learn more about what it is you're applying for. So these are just some examples, but again, all of this is on our website, so you can go back and look at it. And our selection committee will read through every application. They have a spreadsheet where they'll score every application according to these different criteria. And then they send all their scores back to me. And I compile them all and kind of like average them all together so we can see naturally just like, oh, these applications are scoring really high or these applications are scoring pretty low. And it's not that, oh, this one just scored the highest, so they automatically get the grant. There's more nuance that goes into it. But it just helps us try to have an objective way of looking at all the applications and not just going based on like feelings or I don't know, like, oh, I've heard of this artist and I like their work, I think they should get the grant, and it's not based on any specific criteria. So I really like that we do this, and it also helps me when I'm communicating to artists that are applying, like, hey, look at this scoring matrix. This is what our selection committee will be looking at and evaluating your application based on. So yeah, that's a little bit more about how we evaluate them. And then next is a timeline of the process and kind of what to expect if you get a grant. So we have 3 application deadlines every year. They're always on the 15th, January 15th, March 15th, and October 15th. So the next one is next month, October 15th. And the professional basics one and education one are offered at all 3 different deadlines. And then the 2 larger ones, the creative projects and community-based ones, we really only read through those applications at 2 points in the year. So it'll be October and March. But the applications are open year round. You can submit an application whenever you want. It's just like once we hit these deadlines, then we'll start going through the process of evaluating the applications, selecting people, and so on. So I'll kind of talk more about that. So like on October 15th, that's the next deadline. All the applications we receive by October 15th, we'll send them to the selection committee. They'll read them, and then we'll have a meeting and they'll decide who the final grantees will be. So that's why we usually notify applicants within a month. So if you apply for the October 15th deadline, we'll notify you by about November 15th, because it takes time to read through all the applications. score all of them and then make the final decision, because we have to have like a meeting with all of this together. So we'll notify applicants within a month whether they got it or not. After you get notified, we'll have the grantees sign an agreement, which is basically just saying, you know, like, I applied for this project, I will use the money for this project that I applied with, and I meet all the eligibility criteria and things like that. So you'll sign that. Once we get all the paperwork, we'll send you a check in the mail. So usually from like the deadline to when you physically receive the money, it could take like 6 weeks. And then after you receive the money, you just spend it on your project. You complete the project within a year. And then after it's completed, we ask everyone to submit a report, which just collects information like, hey, send us images of the project you did, how much money did you spend, if you had like an exhibition or a program, where did it take place and when, and things like that. But again, you don't really have to worry about that until the end. So that's kind of how the process goes. And again, this happens 3 times a year. So that's the timeline. And then these are examples of projects that we've funded in the past. I think all of these are recipients from the past year. So for the education, we had Kendall Ross, who did a residency at the Penland School of Craft, and also Kyle Tadaro, who did an art intensive. It was the Kent Art Blossom intensive, which I had never heard of before, but it sounded really interesting. Then for professional basics, we had Jim Weaver. He was having a solo show at a gallery in Joshua Tree. And I believe for his, he just requested like the $500 so he could frame his artwork for that show. And Danae Smith, who was having a show at a gallery in the Paseo. And again, I think she probably requested money for like framing or like materials to make the artwork for the show. And then other examples for the creative projects, we had Liz Duck, who had her project is called Along the Cimarron Exhibition and Artist Retreat. Hers was really interesting because her artwork is really based around like nature. So she took a group of artists on a nature retreat and they created artwork, and then afterwards had a show where they displayed all the artwork. So again, this is a little bit different than a normal exhibition, but still kind of fits that, where, you know, it was her and other artists creating artwork, and then they showed it at a public event, which was the exhibition that they had. And then Jasmine Jones, hers was a solo show, like a standard exhibition where she created work. And then her show was at OU, University of Oklahoma. And then the community artist partnership grants, we had Narciso Arguelles, who had a mural project. And so he mentored a bunch of, I think they were like teen artists in Norman, and they worked together to create a mural at the Firehouse Art Center in Norman. So again, he was partnering, I think he might have partnered with Norman Public Schools, and at least he partnered with the Firehouse Art Center to have these people come together. And again, they created artwork and it resulted in this mural. And then Dawn Tree, this was a really cool example. She partnered with the Park Service in Tulsa, and it was during spring break. She taught art classes to kids at one of the parks in Tulsa. So that's why it's called Icy and Paint. Like the kids would come and have snacks and like learn how to do art and things. And so again, she's partnering with an organization that serves the public, like the Park Service, and then is offering you know, art making opportunities to the community. And and the community that she was reaching was like kids in the Tulsa area. Because I feel like sometimes that's confusing when you say community, it sounds very broad. But it can be a specific community that you're reaching. It doesn't have to just be every single person in Oklahoma. But again, yeah, this is my contact information. So please take down my email if you have questions. Please feel free to reach out to me, and I can also read your applications ahead of time if that would be helpful, or set up meetings with you guys to like answer questions more in depth, or talk about your applications, or anything like that. But I know we only have 10 minutes left, so I want to go ahead and let you guys answer some or ask some questions if you have any. And you can put them in the chat, or you can just take yourself off of mute and ask too. Okay. Someone's asking about my email. I will send that in the chat. How long should an artist statement be? It depends, because in some applications, it just depends on the application. They might have a word count, but I feel like usually like 200 or 250 words or less is good. It doesn't have to be super, super long. But again, that would be something that I would just recommend like looking at whatever application. And if they have a word count or something, that would be something to keep in mind. And May asked, when do the funds become available for successful applicants? So I can go back in this timeline. But yeah, we'll notify applicants like a month after the deadline. So if you apply on October 15th, we'll notify you on November 15th. And then we just need to get some like paperwork, like your agreement and tax information. And as soon as we get that, then we can print your check and send it. So usually from the deadline to when people actually get their check in the mail, or when we send the check in the mail, I guess is probably like 6 or 7 weeks. But yeah, I mean, you have like a year to complete your project. So it takes a little bit to get the money to everybody, but you have plenty of time to spend it once you get it. And then Don has a question. You can go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like to talk. Yes, Don asked, can a 501c3 or a nonprofit collaborate with an artist for the Community Artist Partnership Grant? And yeah, you definitely can. Sorry if that was like a little bit confusing, but yeah, we write the checks to the individual artists. So like Narciso's project where he partnered with the Firehouse Art Center, they're, I believe, a nonprofit. So we gave Narciso the money. He was really the one organizing the opportunity and organizing this mural project, but was working with people at this nonprofit to kind of like reach the community, and that's where they did the mural at. So yeah, you can definitely partner with a nonprofit. But yeah, the money will go directly to the individual artists. And And may ask, can you submit applications as artist duos? And yeah, you can. If your project is featuring like more than one artist or collaborating, I feel like if it's just two people, you could probably just put both of your names in the application. If it's a big group, you can just put, your name and then indicate, maybe like in your project summary, these are the people I'm going to be working with, and we're all collaborating on a project. So when we get the paperwork, we're just gonna have like one person sign the agreement, and we'll have to write the check to one artist. So one person will kind of have to be responsible for, probably submitting the application, signing the paperwork and stuff, but your project can involve pretty much as many people as you would want. And then B asked, if your project needs $1,000, can you apply for the $1,500 grant and request $1,000, or do you like have to request the full amount? And yeah, if your project doesn't need the full $1,500, you can just apply for the $1,000. And I guess I didn't state it super overtly, but all of the categories, they're like up to $500, up to $1,500. So sometimes, if we're at the end of the year and we only have so much money left, but we really want to fund these projects, sometimes we will just offer like $1,000 to some projects instead of the full amount. Just because if we don't have the money to fully fund every single project, we still want to offer as much as we can. So yeah, just keep that in mind. It's up to 500 or up to 1,500. And if you want to request a lower amount, that's totally fine. And you can definitely do that. Are there any other questions that anybody has? Okay. I don't think there are any other questions, so I will call this meeting good. And yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. I hope it was really helpful, all the information. And again, if you have questions, please email me and also visit our website. A lot of this information is on there. And again, I'm recording, so I'll upload this online. We'll probably put it on our website, definitely on our YouTube, and then I can send it to you guys as well, so you have access to it. But thank you guys so much again, and I'm sure I'll see you all around soon.